Hi everyone, it's good to be here. Thanks Tobias for bringing me here. So that's the title. I want to talk about our practice of design fiction, what we're doing in the Near Future Laboratory, a little bit of what I'm doing at the Geneva School of Art and Design, and show the relationship between my practice as an ethnographer in conjunction with design and design fiction. So this is us. Near Future Laboratory is a small practice. I'm in Geneva, Switzerland. My colleague Fabien is in Madrid, in Spain, and this is Julian in Los Angeles and Nick in San Francisco. So we're somehow a loose collective of practitioners and thinkers working both in Europe and in the US, and that's how we collaborate over the networks, generally with projects that we work together or not, depends on the project. We work sometimes with clients in Europe or in the US, or sometimes with our own resources, self-funded projects. And the point is that we try to collaborate over the distance to, explore different things. And the sort of mission we define for ourselves is to explore near futures. We're not interested in the long run, but more about 2, 3, 5 years in the future, and try to chart the unexpected. Try to understand what's happening and what may happen, and transform those kind of change or opportunities into new intangible forms. And what we mean by new intangible forms is to use design fiction and forms of speculative design as a way to materialize or to show the consequences of social and technological change. Depending on the who we work for, the project can be about car-sharing systems, self-driving cars, smart cities, location-based games, robots, etc. So this list is just to show you that in general the people who approaches us are interested in digital technologies, and as digital technology is now everywhere, that's basically what we try to help the client with, to figure out or show the consequences of this kind of omnipresence of digital technologies in the world around us. So in terms of what I want to address this morning, I think I have an hour or something like that. The idea would be to start from our own definition of what design fiction is. I guess you already had people explaining what speculative design, critical design, and design fiction is, but I think it's interesting. Each person, each practitioner in this field has his own or her own perspective. So I'm going to start with that, and then I try to categorize the type of big issues or questions that we are interested in when it comes to design fiction. Questions about the format, questions about stories and fiction, what we mean by fiction in this case. Future mundane, the fact that we're interested not necessarily in far-fetched and complex futures, but we're interested in the mundane exploration of technology. The role of ethnography in this, which is very strongly related to my own practice, and how this is supposed to create a debate, because obviously speculative design and design fiction has a mission. One of the missions is to spark or create a debate about whether or not we want certain piece of technology or certain type of change to happen. And hopefully based on this kind of 5 topics, I will try to wrap things up with a conclusion. And my point would be to take examples of our work or the work we've done with other people to show this kind of how these issues are addressed in our work. So design fiction, I guess you know that term. You heard about that. There's plenty of different definitions, but for us at the Near Future Laboratory, this kind of design fiction meme or concept is strongly connected with science fiction, our own interest in science fiction culture. So here you have 2001: A Space Odyssey, the movie by Stanley Kubrick, and the reason why I show this here is because Kubrick was very, well, it was both influential in terms of his practice related with science fiction production, but also the way he did it was very, well, very thoughtful somehow. And each of the decisions he took for the production of his movie was well, very important and backed by facts or consultants or people who advised him how to do things. And here you have, like in this part of the movie, these people are in this very fancy rooms, and as you can see in the background, it's called a picture phone. I don't know if you're familiar with what the picture phone is, but it's one of the earliest instantiation of visual communication over distance. Like we would call that Skype with video or FaceTime today, but back in the 60s, the picture phone was a technology developed by AT&T in its research laboratories. That's why you have here the logo of Bell System, which is kind of tweaked, because Kubrick took a piece of technology that existed at the time and tweaked it a little bit to make it plausible and relevant in his movie. There's plenty of other details that, in terms of design, that could be addressed here as well. The chairs designed by a French designer, I don't remember his name. The fonts used in the movie. So a lot of the details, a lot of the design details in 2001 were really carefully chosen in a way that people who would watch the movie would have the impression that things are real, things are not like completely weird and fantastic. Another big example and a famous example when it comes to science fiction and representing how things could be is the Minority Report, the movie by Steven Spielberg. And there's plenty of examples in this movie, but maybe the most common one is this scene where you have this famous Scientologist gesticulating in front of this wall, interactive wall. And here, I mean, it's an interesting example if you look at how this piece is being produced. The person in charge of the production for Steven Spielberg decided to work with a design group at the MIT Media Lab at the time, in the Tangible Media Group, and a guy called John Underkoffler developed this prototype, a piece of technology that could be used in the movie and could show how interfaces might be used in the future by cops. So here you have it's different than the Kubrick example. It's a piece of technology specially designed for a movie, and the constraints about the movie kind of fueled the definition of the design of the object. And of course, afterwards, like in 2004, when you had the Nintendo Wii or Microsoft Kinect, well, the press, the media were all about, oh, this is like Minority Report, this is like the science fiction movie, and somehow this example, this piece of technology played an important role, a sort of cultural baggage to shape our expectations about technology. So that's an interesting example of how design and science fiction can be related. Another examples coming from Hollywood again is The Lift, the movie by John Carpenter, where you would see a guy like using glasses that would show those subliminal kind of messages in the city. And of course, you can see that as a sort of anticipation of augmented reality, or it's not like Pokemon, it's like Pokemon Go we see nowadays. It's much more, it's much darker, but somehow it anticipates the type of technology we have nowadays, and also the sort of critique of capitalism behind it. So those three examples are just meant to show that there's this. There's this connection between design and science fiction, design and anticipation, designing artifacts that are meant to show us the plausibility of a certain future or show us the consequences of certain technology. There's another field which is kind of interesting in this as well, is if you look at, I mean, if you look at things like those books designed by, not by the Hollywood producers, but by people who are interested in what I've just said before, but who try to create that from scratch. Like here you have this example from, I don't remember the name of the guy who designed that, but he was so crazy about Star Trek that he created this manual of Star Trek technology, a technical manual of the artifacts, the fictional artifacts you see in Star Trek. I'm not much of a Trekkie fan, Trekkie myself, but I find that quite interesting that some guy at some point like take the time to produce something like that, like with a very good attention to, a very thoughtful attention to details about a lot of things, and that's interesting for me because as a former like I used to play role-playing games and games like that. There's a whole so to say a whole culture of creating fictional artifacts. Here you have Chromebook. It's a supplement to the a role-playing game called Cyberpunk 2020, and it's a sort of catalog of fictional artifacts you may want to use in the game. And it's not a game on the screen. I mean, if you have never played role-playing games, just people sitting at a table talking about the fact that they would use this piece of technology to do this or that, and you have like. They're not designers, but maybe they are. I mean, there are people creating those resources for the players and the game masters so that they have like a list of artifacts, a list of opportunities and possibilities to use in the game itself. And that's, for me, that was a very important inspiration when we started working on design fiction, because it shows that you can, I mean, if you want to tell a story about how the future might be, I mean, you could do a movie, or you could do you could write a story, a text. But there are other formats, there are other kind of approaches which might be interesting, and other approaches that already exist. And like this kind of artifact, like catalog of fictional objects, seems like something strange, but it's. I mean, it strikes me as very interesting as a way to exemplify or to illustrate. How things could be, and of course at the time, like 20 years ago, playing with this kind of thing, I didn't know that I would work on this kind of topic later, but I think it shaped my, it was quite influential in my own practice to think about like different ways to tell stories about the future. And I used to read role-playing game manuals or this as a sort of fiction and a sort of narrative, except that it's very fragmented. There's a list of artifacts. It's not just a story with clear characters. Another, of course, another influential type of work is the whole field around speculative design. I guess you've heard about that. I'm pretty sure Tobias told you about the history of speculative design. There's this project. One of the projects that was maybe one of the most influential for me is this Audio Tooth by James Auger and Jimmy Loiseau, like quite a long time ago now. It's maybe not because of its design aesthetic, this big transparent tooth in which you have this piece of technology that is supposed to turn your teeth into telephones. But what I find interesting in this project is that after they exhibited the project, they got plenty of emails about it, about people who complained about that, about people who were really enthusiastic about it, and I think in the Time magazine in 2002, this the tooth was named as one of the coolest gadgets of the year, and of course that helps to trigger some reactions. And for me, like all the emails they got, all the messages they received, are even more interesting than the object itself, because it's somehow the discussion they wanted to happen about the ethics and the problems caused by this piece of technology. So there's three different kind of examples: science fiction movies, the sort of DIY practice around technology and design, like the manuals that I've presented before, and speculative design, for me shaped my interest about design fiction. And when we try to somehow to have a definition of at the near future laboratory, as we say, what design fiction is for us, we say that it's an approach to design that speculates about new ideas through prototyping, like tangible artifacts, creating artifacts, and storytelling, using standard objects or media convention as a way to express ideas about the future. And that's why we're doing, in terms of artifact, it could be video, it could be product catalog, it could be a map of a fictional area, it could be a fictional newspaper, etc., etc. I'll get back to the format later. And for us, this is a tool for designing, challenging, or understanding the possibility, how the world could be, and speculate about that. Which is, this kind of working definition is not, it's not so different from sort of canonical the description of what critical design or speculative design is according to Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby. But for us, there's one of the nuance maybe is the way, the type of context we operate. We're not, for me or my colleague, we're not, we work with the industry most of the time, so we have to adapt somehow the type of speculation and the type of formats we are doing. We're less involved with design museum or galleries, although sometimes that can happen, but so it maybe influenced our practice. Oh, and this is, I don't know why this slide jumped. Maybe it's cursed. So this is really intriguing. Like this, and I guess it's because of name journalism that some people decided this kind of speculative design was true, and they were fooled, and they put that on the cover of this. But I think it's quite interesting because eventually, when we're talking about speculative design and design fiction, there's always this debate or this discussion about, okay, but are you just trying to fool people, or is that more serious? Is there more to it than that? And I'll get back to that at the end of my presentation. But there's partly, of course, there's not fooling people, but trying to show that things are not exactly as they think it could be, or it could be a bit different, or play with their expectations, but use that in a more serious way to show people the consequences of technologies. So first topic I wanted to address about design fiction it's quite specific to our approach at the Near Future Laboratory, is what my colleague Nick Foster called the future mundane. The mundane aspect of the world we are interested in when it comes to design fiction. So I recommend you a column he wrote for Course 77, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. If you Google Future Mundane and Core 77, you would find it. And in this column, that was kind of influential for our practice at the Near Future Laboratory. It takes 3 examples of why it's interesting to focus on the mundane and the banal, on like very mundane things in our society. The first one is that we tend to focus on heroes in the movie, but there's more to that. So here you have like this another part from Minority Report, where Tom Cruise is annoyed by this cereal box, and because of some sort of augmented reality things that happen on it, and toss it in the room. And I think that's an interesting example, because design is often focused on designing for heroes, like young, affluent white males. If you look at commercials and ads, it's the type of person you often see. And focusing on the mundane or the banal, like this kind of example, is tells us a lesson about the fact that we should think about other things. We should think about other people, other situations. The person who chose to put that kind of crap on the cereal box did not really think it through. I mean, it's not necessarily pleasant. It's not necessarily interesting. Although, from a movie production perspective, it's intriguing. But it tells us a lesson about the fact that any details in our world is design, and we need to think about those details. So the future mundane, as my colleague Nick Foster says, it's filled with background talents or opportunities, and this is a good example. Another important lesson that can from this notion of future mundane, or taking into account the banality of a word, is that our world is generally broken, and of course science fiction plays around that. There's this quote from the science fiction author Frederick Pohl that says, "A good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile but the traffic jam." And that's an important lesson when it comes to speculative design and design fiction, where it's important to anticipate not just the technology, but the consequences and the friction of a technology or social change with how people appropriate those changes. And as science fiction tried to follow that rule, speculative design and design fiction generally plays with those friction and try to, show that they can happen, they may happen in a certain way, and showing that to people may be a way to show them that we should not take that path. And it's even more important when it comes to the banality of our daily experience with the world, because if there's plenty of friction, that's annoying and frustrating. And the last thing that Nick wrote in his column that is also interesting is the fact that the mundane banality of our experience with technology is accretive. That's a term coming from geology, where the different layers on the planet is just one on top of another, and that's important to remind us that technology is not just about things that are new. Here you have examples of it's a photo I've taken in one of my field research projects, where you see a guy, he has an iPod Touch and a dumb phone. He doesn't want to use a smartphone anymore for different reasons. And he used this very old phone that he kept from 5 years ago, and his iPod Touch as a way to prevent the distractions from the constant connectivity with smartphones. And that's important, because each time I work with clients and we're talking about a new app or a new possibility, there's always this tendency to think that everyone wants to buy the new piece of technology, but it's not always the case. And there are the people who do not even have those technologies like that. So when we try to show the mundane aspect of technology in a design fiction movie, we try to take that into account. So we show not just the latest piece of technology, but the one which happened before. We show the frictions that I've presented before, and we try to show tiny details of situations that generally are not necessarily considered by big technological companies. There's this quote that was kind of influential in our work by science fiction writer William Gibson. It's in a book called Distrust That Particular Flavor, which I strongly recommend. It's a set of short stories, interviews, and columns from William Gibson, and he offers this very interesting insight or lesson about how he works. He says, "My first impulse when presented with any spanking new piece of computer hardware is to imagine how it will look like in 10 years' time, gathering dust under a card table in a thrift shop." And I think we can take that. For us, with my colleague, we kind of take that to the letter. Each time we see a new piece of technology, we try to think about how it might age, how it might evolve, how it might like gather dust somewhere. We did a project which is kind of close to that a few years ago called Corner Convenience, in which we started from an exploration, field exploration of convenience stores in different places. That's easy because we're not all living in the same place, so we took advantage of that. This is one of my pictures in Italy, I think, and we explored convenience stores in Switzerland, France, Italy, the UK, the US, Spain. And for us, we were interested in this kind of setting because we made the hypothesis that all great innovations and invention, the technological innovation, at some point they find their way to this in a very cheap and banal way. So what we did was to document the objects we can find them there, try to document their history. Like you have batteries, you have pocket light, condoms, aspirin, all those things at some point were kind of big breakthrough. But now it's kind of cheap and you can find them there. And we use that as a stimulus, as a sort of like inspiration in a workshop in Phoenix to think about what we will find in the near future in those places. What will be the consequences of like social networks or 3D printers? At the time, Foursquare was still important, so how location-based services would be important in those places. And we created a set of props, set of artifacts just to show how social networks might end up in a convenience store. So scratching cards to win a million of followers on Twitter. How you can buy cards, like you swipe near your augmented reality glasses or virtual reality glasses to have the complete works of Bruce Willis brought to you by Kraft Sony, which somehow merged in the future. How like a crappy 3D printer might end up in one of those plays, or how like getting out of the shop would do a check-in on Foursquare. That's the old Foursquare logo. So this was done quite quickly. It was a day-long workshop, and we used that afterwards to do a short movie that showed a corner convenience store from the near future. And the point of that is definitely not to think about the future of corner convenience for the sake of it. It's just to show that at some point, new technologies they just turn into very banal and somehow weird situations like this. And the reason why we're interested in that is, of course, that we want to get back to today and wonder about how those technologies could be changed or readapted or transformed, and have dialogue with people about their consequences eventually. There's I think it's interesting to have a lot of examples of design fictions to see the possibilities. When it comes to pawn shop, thrift shop, as a sort of tactic to think about how technology of today can be we can speculate about it in the future. There's also the work by the Extrapolation Factory, which created this Pawn Tomorrow project, where they try to think about a pawn shop or a thrift shop in the future and see what kind of technologies could be found in there. So I think it's interesting as a sort of a variation on the William Gibson's quote that I presented, and a bit similar and different at the same time as what we did in the Corner Convenience project. Good group of people as well. So second topic that is very dear to my heart is about ethnography. Ethnography, I guess you're familiar with the term, is the set of methods and theories used by sociologists and anthropologists to understand the world around us, to make sense of the world around us. And it took a lot of importance in design communities in the last 30 years as a way to use that kind of insights to feed the design process. And my work is mainly about that. It's mainly about observing, interviewing people, and use that kind of insights to work with designers or any kind of design stakeholders in the design process. So why am I interested in the relationship between ethnography and design fiction? It's simply because, for me, like if we want to make design fiction plausible, believable, if you want to craft details to show this kind of future mundane that I've presented before, we need to consider the diversity and the complexity of the world around us. So in general, it's when we work on a project, there are different starting points. It could be a topic, self-driving cars, augmented reality, Internet of Things at home. Could be a new kind of technology. But most of the time, we always try to connect these very technological components with people's practices or how people talk about those technologies and practices. And the way we try to work out the design fiction is always a sort of dialogue between all those components, how people name things, the technology they use, what they do, the kind of values they put in what they do, and like a sort of umbrella theme or overarching topic. And in terms of the approach, I mean, it's quite straightforward. It's generally start from us trying to understand a certain social phenomenon, like could be what happens nowadays when people don't want to buy a car and use car sharing systems or ride sharing platforms, or to understand the mental models or the sort of representation people build about a certain piece of technology. Try to describe that in a way that can be a summary or a synthesis of what we have seen and the interviews we made, the observation we made, the recordings, all the data we produced, and try to balance this summary with the complexity of the world around us. And it could take an original format, like in the Corner Convenience project I've presented you. We did this newspaper that describes the different objects you may find in a convenience store. In another project that I'm going to talk about, I did a book about the gestures we make with technology. So there's generally the description plays an important role because it forces us to step back and think about how the world is now, and then speculate about that. Use that kind of details to think about how things might change and extrapolate from those details that we have described. And I mean, to go into too much details, what we are interested in is people's motivation, their behaviors, their habits, their routines, the peculiar ways of doing things they have, their needs, their emotion, the artifacts they use, the repurposed or transformed artifact they use. If you spend a lot of time with people trying to understand how they use a piece of technology, chances are that they will show you that they try to find a way to adjust or transform the piece of technology they have. And all of those categories of observation are very important for crafting a plausible or believable or an interesting design fiction project, because it allows to ground our extrapolation into something that can be relevant, interesting, and also that makes sense, and not just something that is completely far-fetched. And that's maybe one of the difference between when you see a video from like big corporation when they try to represent how the world might be in the future with technology. I always wonder about like these categories, and there's always something that doesn't really fit. If you look at like some of the corporate videos about technology in the future, you always wonder about like whether they took into account how people really do things, or how people always try to readapt and transform objects. I mean, like plenty of people have stickers on laptops. You never see a sticker on a laptop or a sticker on a smartphone in a smartphone ad or incorporate fiction video, and that's of course there are reasons for that, but that makes them less plausible and less relevant. So one example that's a bit old now, but still interesting to show, it's a project called Curious Rituals that I did in partnership with the student from Art Center in Pasadena in the US. And it's a project about the gestures and the postures we adopt using digital technologies. So we wanted to think about the evolution of those gestures and postures with new pieces of technologies. So we started from exploring like how people use smartphones, sensors, laptops. You have all those different gestures that I'm sure you're familiar with, like the sort of periscope, human periscope people do in tourist setups or in concerts. This is me waving my hand to reactivate the sensor because the light in the toilet is disappeared. This is Julian Blicker, my colleague, doing this kind of baboon face to protect his phone conversation, etc. So there's plenty of, like, speaking about those, there's plenty of things you can grab observing and interviewing people. And we did a book about that, and based on the different categories of habits and gestures we found, we tried to speculate about how they might evolve in the future. So here you have like the type of gestures we noticed, the nervous gestures we do with technology, people gesticulating with their phones, scratching their head with their augmented reality glasses. What we call digital plumbing is how people try to fix or repair their technology when it doesn't work, people dropping their laptop or doing this with their phones. The gestures that are meant to show yourself to others, the way you, hold your smartphone, for instance. The gestures that are defined by the designers and the companies which created those technologies. So those were some of the categories we noticed. So we used that as a starting point to think about, okay, what's going to happen in the future with augmented reality glasses, with gestural interfaces, with brain-computer interfaces. There will always be these categories. People will always be nervous. What happens when someone gets nervous with augmented reality glasses or with a brain-computer interface? Or what happens when someone tries to fix a brain-computer interface or a gestural interface? And we use that kind of like this sort of move from the categories of habits we notice to upcoming technologies as a sort of ways to extrapolate in the near future. And we did a short movie showing different scenes. Like you have here two persons recharging the batteries of their phones and augmented reality glasses. Someone watching a TV show and removing the glasses each time there's an ad that appears on the screen, etc., etc. So there's the movie on Vimeo if you want to look at that. But it's a bit old now, but what is interesting here, and maybe more interesting on the project, is starting from the here and now, noticing some patterns of behavior and transposing those patterns of behavior to new pieces of technologies. And of course, I mean, maybe we're wrong with this kind of extrapolations, but the point of the speculation is not to predict the future, but to have discussions about, do we really want this kind of situation to happen or not, or how can we reinvent them in a way that is much more ethical or much more relevant for users. I can show you a short another project that we did. This is with two students from the Geneva School of Art and Design that I did last year. It's a bit similar. It started from an exploration of people's behavior, how people do selfies with their smartphone, and we try to think about the evolution of digital cameras on the phone.
Thank you for choosing the selfie mode. You made the right choice. Please place the camera in front of your human face. Please smile. You don't look joyful. Please look like your life were fantastic. Please turn your face 15 degrees to the left. Keep straight. Please keep your back straight. Please smile. You have to work for those likes. Please tilt your face to the right at a 5.5 degree angle from the vertical axis. Try again. Tilt your face to the right at a 5.5 degree, please. Now turn your shoulders in the opposite direction. Very good, you're a natural. Raise your arm up to 45 degrees from the horizontal plane towards the sky. You're a female, place your left hand on your left hip. If you're not female, ignore this instruction and blow your chest out. Stand on the tip of your toes. Don't forget to smile. Please check your background. Translocate the non-identified object on the bottom left. Very good. Please be still. Congratulations, you made a perfect selfie. You are now allowed and kindly requested to upload it. Thank you for choosing the selfie mode. You made the right choice.
So this was a project we did in partnership with Logitech to show the evolution of digital cameras, and I mean, it was done in a week. It's very quick, but the point was to start from the student explored how people do selfies. They found this kind of community of people really paying attention to detail with selfies and like the type of the best angles or the best type of light to do selfies. So they just took those ingredients about what they noticed on the field and transposed that into a situation where facial detection can be used to improve the selfie practice. So that's an interesting example of how some insights coming from the field, like the 45 degrees angle. They didn't invent that. They had people who told them that that's really what we noticed. That's very interesting when you have a 45 degrees angle to do selfies, and it just took those little ingredients to create the short movie afterwards. Format is another topic that is important. For us, near future laboratory, this is by format I mean the type of format we choose for the design fiction. We were asked last year or 2 years ago by the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis to do a project with them, and we created this list of a design fiction shop where you have a list of formats, and people will have to pay for a design fiction, and the price is different whether it's a restaurant menu or a press release or a product unboxing video. No one ordered anything, of course, but we took that. We took that as a way to think about the kind of formats we're using. I've presented several videos, and that's one of the obvious choice when you think about design fiction. For a lot of people, design fiction equals videos, but I think there's much more. There's much more to it, and those are some examples that could be used. Of course, some of them are completely weird and tricky to create. But for us, choosing the right format is also important as a way to create something that can spark a specific kind of debate and discussion. It can be useful to create a story, a narrative. I'll get back to that later. And also, if we want to help people to think about the consequences or implications of technologies, different formats have different merits or advantages. For instance, we did a project called TBD Catalog. It's a catalog of fictional objects about how network technology can have an influence on artifacts in the world around us. We did that in the after a visit of the Henry Ford Foundation in Detroit. So we observed like all the objects that had a very important influence in the world around us, very future mundane. And we were inspired by the Sky Mall catalog, this catalog of gadgets you find in when you take a flight in North America. I think now they're bankrupt, but it's always been an interesting things to read with like weird object like this. So we wanted to do something similar. We chose the catalog format because we thought it would be interesting to. A catalog is made of, you have plenty of objects, so that allows to force you to think about variation or the diversity of perspective and not just one type of future. You have plenty of artifacts. Each artifact tells a different story about the future of like the Internet of Things or networked technologies. So we did that in a workshop with designers, science fiction writers, artists, and in the end we created this catalog like the Sky Mall catalog I've presented before. Each of the elements, each of the artifacts in the catalog is described with some visuals, with a graphic design, which is a type of graphic design a bit crappy you would find in an actual catalog. There's a price, there's icons that tell something about the object, and the point of having plenty of objects like this is that you can put things which are kind of new, like AI coach or smartwatches, but also all the old objects that could still be important. That's the kind of, when I mentioned my colleague Nick Foster talking about future mundane as something that is accretive, the accumulation of artifacts over time. Well, you can have Olivetti typewriters from the 70s in a catalog of high-tech products. That can happen. Because that's how the world is, and it can be an object that people really want to have, even if it's old, because there's value into that, because they can use that as a sort of decorative prop at home. So using the catalog format was a way to show this diversity of perspective and not forget that we accumulate artifacts over time, and there's not just new ones that are present, like electronic cigarettes and pipes in conjunction with new kind of networked object. So the formatting choice, if you do like a video, if you do a user manual, a catalog, an unboxing video like you put on YouTube, if you do ads, classified ads, I mean, there's plenty of choice, and of course there's some sort of creativity in choosing the right format and turning that to tell a story, but each type of format has its own merit, depending on how you want to use the video. In our case, the catalog was a way to have a conversation about the diversity of opportunities and problems, and it's a different conversation than having a very focused discussion about for instance, using a user manual to show the problems and opportunities of one specific piece of technology. So choosing the right formats, even if it's a fictional package, a fictional menu, like a serial box, as in the Minority Report example, has its own merit, but then there are issues regarding their circulation. Like if you do a box made of cardboard, I mean, you're going to do pictures of that, but the story about the implication of what you showed might be a bit tricky to tell. Whereas in the catalog, you have text along with pictures, so that's a way to facilitate the narrative. I mean, each time we work on a design fiction project, we have this kind of conversation. I don't have a specific recommendation saying that you should use a patent filling application document for this or an unboxing video for that, but that's the type of conversation you may want to have each time you're set on the kind of like ideas or design fiction project you want to do. It's good to think about the variety or the diversity of format to reshape your project. And choosing the right format is also interesting when it comes to crafting a story. design fiction. And here, I think there's something that is kind of there's kind of a confusion when we talk about design fiction and stories. There's a confusion between fiction, narrative, story. There's this expectation that if you have a fiction, there should be a story in a very strict sense of things, and this leads to a discussion about what is actually fictional in a design fiction. Is it having a story? Is it having something that you pretend already exists? I don't have a definite answer for that, but that's something that is not necessarily clear, and I've seen some reactions of people who are like, okay, but you created a catalog, but a catalog isn't a story. But that's not, maybe the people who make this kind of complaints about this kind of problems have a different definition of what a story is. And as that's actually okay. It's just that in our case, when we do a catalog or we do a user manual, it's less about crafting a story in the strict sense of it than creating a sort of a model of how the world could be. Here you have like this kind of very strange model is by Alex McDowell, who's the important producer, works at USC in Los Angeles, and he did movie production for different science fiction movie. I think he worked on Minority Report and Avatar, and I quite like this notion of word building model. It's not about, and this, I'll get back to the graphic afterwards, but there's this quote by Bruce Sterling that I think try to make sense of the fiction aspect of design fiction. It says it's not a kind of fiction, it's a kind of design. It tells words rather than stories, and that's actually what we are interested in, is creating like a word and the consequences of technology as part of this word to show people how things could be if this social change or if this technological change were bound to happen. And it's less about like saying, okay, there's going to be this character and this other character and they're going to do this and that, like you would have in a very, like, of course that's a caricature of what the story could be, but it's more about starting from creating the conditions of a word by doing ethnographic research, by doing research about the possibility of a technology, and thinking about how this might change the world around us, and creating like a fictional company or a the fictional aspect of the technology, and then create an artifact that encapsulates this. So by creating starting from the behavior, the language, the artifact that may exist, that tells, implicitly it's a story, but in the end it's more like creating a world with artifacts. So I guess this is a bit unclear, so let's take an example. This is one of the projects that my colleague Fabien from the Near Future Laboratory did last year. He created this website from a fictional company called 6andMe. It's like 23andMe, the company that can do some genomic analysis of your genome, but for your behavior and social network. So you go on a website, you give access to your personal data, and then the company is supposed to analyze your behavior and send you a report about the patterns they notice, the problems, the pathologies. We created like a list of fictional pathologies that we have when using digital technology, and in this context, it's less about creating a story or narrative. It's more about creating a fictional company that may exist depending on the state of technology we have, and see how this technology may offer its services on the website, the kind of language or visual language they might use, using like inspiration from companies doing DNA analysis. And here it's more about creating, it's more about world building. Like we define a fictional company, we define the visual and the language they might use, and it's more about that than creating a story about that. Both can be done. I mean, there could be this, and you could have like a science fiction text that tells the problem that may happen if this were bound to exist. But this is another alternative. It's a bit more open-ended. It allows people to have a discussion about what does it mean to have those tests, what does it mean to have concerns or an evaluation of your diseases in a different way than like a text or a short movie, for instance. So that's okay. Both can be done. We like to produce that because we find it's another way to engage participants and people in the debate about technology. But I mean, there are different options here. I'm going to skip that. So by creating like these fictional words with artifacts, with language, eventually the reason why we're doing that is with clients or with the people we work with is to create a debate, a discussion about whether this technology or this kind of social change is important, is ethical, is problematic. And here I have this quote from a design researcher, Laura Fornado, who, I mean, I think it's quite interesting because it forces us to think about, especially for me as an ethnographer, it forces us to think about why we are doing that and why we are producing artifacts, insights, knowledge about the world around us. Of course, it's funny to do, I mean, all those projects that I've presented before. But eventually, the reason why we do that is to, get back to the people we work with, like the informants or the stakeholders of a project, and have a discussion about the problems that may be caused by the technology, the opportunities that may happen with a certain piece of technology. So let's take an example. This is a project that we've done, I think it was 2 years ago, in collaboration with Scott Smith and Pop-Up Urbain, French design studio, with the National Football Museum in Manchester, about the evolution of sport and sport reporting, sport journalism, based on network technologies, sensors, analytics. So what we did was to create this fictional magazine, another format, fictional magazine, that is from 2018, and that has some data visualization about the players. There's some new kind of statistics and use of analytics, and shows articles about the role of big data in sport and sport journalism. And the point of doing that was, although of course this is fun to explore, the point of doing that is that it was part of the exhibit as a way to show people interested in soccer and football as a cultural phenomenon. It was to show that things are changing. There are new, both new opportunities and new shift that could be interesting to discuss. So how to create a debate, how to spark a certain debate was part of the project, because it was done by a museum. The newspaper was part of the museum, but it was also my colleagues like Fabien or Scott. They dropped some copies in the public transport and tried to observe how people would react to such kind of content. Of course, I mean, people noticed that some players had changed. They went from one team to another. Things were a bit strange in terms of the teams and rankings. But overall, they also had to, they also noticed that certain things were different in the way the game were reported, or the place taken by technology in the reporting, and that created a debate about that. And last presented, I wanted to show is this manual for a self-driving car that we did, was done last year at the IXDA Interaction Conference in San Francisco, and one of you have participated in this year. So the idea was to, we wanted to work on self-driving car because it's kind of abstract for a lot of people. You think about cars, you think about robots, but it's hard to think about how in your life a self-driving car might work. So we chose to create a manual, a quick start guide, like those very tiny guides you have when you buy a new piece of technology, and do that for a self-driving car. And each of the page is a different type of problem, like how to use an emergency mode in the car, how to retrieve your car when it's lost. And we use that not just because we predict that this is how a self-driving car would work, but actually each page in the self-driving car manual is a way to exemplify, to illustrate, and have a conversation about problems. And if you want to work with people interested with this piece of technology, if they think about self-driving cars in an abstract way, the discussion is quite banal and not necessarily interesting because they don't necessarily take into account a lot of constraints about the world around us. Whereas with this, was a way to be quite accurate and precise about, okay, if there's a problem, you need to press the emergency buttons in this situation, this situation, this situation. So what happens if there's a medical emergency, if there's a physical or security threat, and showing that to the people we work with afterwards in, let's say, in a workshop about smart cities and self-driving car was a way to have a very focused and clear conversation about those problems. So, and I'm almost near an hour, so I want to conclude with the fact that for us, all those projects, all those design fiction formats and way to craft stories about the near future, it's just a new form of scenario planning with a focus on very mundane aspect of the world around us, and using tangible artifacts of the everyday, newspapers, manuals, unboxing videos, fictional ads. It's a very simple way to create the symptoms of the thing, the ideas, the possibilities, as if it already existed. And as a person doing ethnography, I see that as a sort of downstream user research. There's user research when you start a project, you want to gain some insights about how people use technology, how people behave. But there's also something at the end when you have crafted a design fiction, or when you created an artifact, when you want to know more about how it can be used. For us, design fiction is a way to do that, to generate a conversation about, social and technological change, and test it and have a conversation with other people. And I don't want to be too academic here, but I think this notion of downstream user research or anticipatory ethnography or ethnographies of the possible that already exist in the field of anthropology and design research. There's this article from a Danish researcher called Joachim Haus that framed the role of design in the sense that it can help to speculate and anticipate things and go from an ethnography of the here and now to an ethnography of the possible. So he says that somehow the ethnographic attention can be turned towards the future, and by creating artifacts that allow participants to, revitalize the past or extrapolate into possible futures, that's something that anthropology should do, and that's where us in design circles or in design research circles, we can help anthropologists to do and help them to think about the future. Another quote from him that I find is important is, I guess you're all convinced about that, is the design component here is not about crafting beautiful and convincing artifact, but create evocative and open-ended material for experimentation in collaboration with non-designers. And of course, when an anthropologist says that, they're not necessarily well, don't necessarily have the skills to do it, and that's where designers and design researchers can help and can collaborate to explore what he explains as particular imaginative horizons in a very concrete ways. And that's actually what we're trying to do with my colleague in the Near Future Laboratory, to find concrete ways, tangible formats to have this conversation and this discussion. And of course, using humor, using like irony to show the frictions between social and technological change and reality. Thank you very much.